And friends, our scripture lesson this week is taken from the Gospel according to John, chapter 1, verses 43 through 51. The next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." Now Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him about whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus, son of Joseph from Nazareth." Nathanael said to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Philip said to him, "Come and see." When Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him, he said of him, "Here is truly an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." Nathanael asked him, "Where did you get to know me?" Jesus answered, "I saw you under the fig tree before Philip called you." Nathanael replied, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Jesus answered, "Do you believe because I told you that I saw you under the fig tree? You will see greater things than these." And he said to him, "Very truly I tell you, you will see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man." Well, this is the weekend where our nation celebrates the birthday of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now, I remember seeing recently on Facebook a question that I thought was interesting. It was, what's the first major news event that you remember from your childhood? Because so often we're kind of defined by the things that we remember. And actually, for me, the assassination of Dr. King is one of the very first major news events that I can remember because it happened when I was 7. And so I remember my older brothers being so distraught, and I remember not even actually being able to grasp the importance of it until later, but I remember seeing how distraught my brothers were, how distraught the nation was that this had happened. And this happened in a time when our nation was very violently divided. I mean, those of you who did not live through that civil rights era, Vietnam War era of the late 60s, early 70s, may not fully appreciate the extent to which there were violent clashes and acts of violence in a nation that was bitterly divided over these issues of race and over the issue of the Vietnam War. And it was easy in that time for people to do exactly what we're seeing around us now, which was to expect the worst out of people, to expect the worst out of the other side. And so you had people who were very much insulting soldiers and police officers, and you had people who were insulting the so-called hippies, the protesters. And it was a bitterly divided time, and what I'm seeing today is somewhat reminiscent of that time. Now, in our passage for the week, what we see is a similar kind of prejudice that's happening. It's not violent, it's not virulent, but it is very dismissive. So we have this situation where Philip has gone to Nathanael and has encouraged him to come and see Jesus, except that he tells him that he is from Nazareth. And Nathanael says, "Are you kidding? Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" It's a very basic prejudice. Now, we don't know exactly what was going on, but we do believe that Nazareth at the time was a small village of maybe only 400 to 500 people. And so it's reasonable to believe that he thought, how could God be doing a significant work from such an insignificant town? It's a very basic prejudice that no one great would come from such a small, insignificant place. And so Nathanael just really isn't very interested in this. And Philip has to cajole him into wanting to learn a little bit more. But Nathanael's low expectations, really left him in a position where he might have missed this opportunity to interact with Jesus. And how often does this happen for us, right? How often do we allow our expectations to limit what we see? How often do we exclude possibility because we've simply dismissed it with low expectations? Nothing good can come from there. Nothing good can come from that. Nothing good can come from her or from him. Whereas God does not dismiss. God sees potential. When Nathanael approaches Jesus, Jesus praises him. Jesus says, here is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit. Jesus lavishes this wonderful praise on him, and you'll notice in the scriptures, by the way, Nathanael doesn't object at all. He doesn't say no. He embraces it, and he says, where did you get to know me? I always thought that was kind of humorously egotistical of Nathanael to receive this great praise and say, wow, you really know me. But Jesus says, I saw you under the fig tree before Philip called you. In other words, before Philip brought you here, before I saw that you were willing to come and explore and investigate, even if you had your doubts, he had seen him. And I believe that what he saw was the potential in him. I believe that God saw who he could be, even if he didn't yet know for himself what he could be, what he could do, what he could become. And that ability to see is an important place to start. And whenever we think about the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, that ability is characterized in that famous speech we know about where he said, I have a dream. And I'm sure you all knew those words before I said them, right? That he had a dream. He had a dream. He had a vision of what could be. Now, that speech was delivered in August of 1963. And he expressed that dream. He became known for that expression of that dream. In fact, that January, he would become Time Magazine's Man of the Year. Now they call it the Person of the Year. But in that original slide that I had as the sermon began, that was a picture of his Time Magazine Man of the Year cover from January of 1964. But the dream didn't come to fruition right away. And in fact, by the time we get to 1965, on the 4th of July, the 4th of July happened to fall on a Sunday that year. And so on Sunday, July 4th, 1965, Dr. King took the pulpit at Ebenezer Baptist Church, the church where the newly elected senator from Georgia, Raphael Warnock, is the pastor. He took the pulpit in that church on Sunday, July 4th, 1965, and he preached a sermon entitled An American Dream. And he talked about how difficult the dream was to hang on to. And here are some of the words from that sermon that I would like to read. And so I'll be interspersing a few of his words through this. And here's some of what he said. He said, now, ever since the founding fathers of our nation dreamed this dream in all of its magnificence, and he's talking about the dream that all people would be created equal, the dream that was espoused in the Declaration of Independence. He says, since then, America has been something of a schizophrenic personality, tragically divided against herself. On the one hand, we have proudly professed the great principles of democracy, but on the other hand, we have sadly practiced the very opposite of those principles. Wow, have those words been true in the last couple of weeks, right? That we have these ideals about how our nation is supposed to function. We have these democratic ideals, and then somehow we fail to live up to them. Somehow we practice the very opposite sometimes of the principles that we claim to believe. So we seem schizophrenic because we practice the opposite of what we say. And this isn't just about our nation. I'm not just talking about what's been going on in the world around us. I'm also talking about what goes on in our businesses, what goes on in the church, and what goes on in ourselves. So often all of those organizations, right? Business, church, and us. We have ideals that we profess. And then we behave in very contradictory ways. That we don't practice those principles, but instead we so often practice the very opposite of those principles. And it's because we're fallen people and we are complex. Each one of us is a complex mixture of good and bad. and so is the world. But as we look at ourselves and as we look at our world and as we understand this very basic truth that you know, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, right? That we know how complex we are. We know that we are good and bad. We know that the world is good and bad. But as we look at this world that is this complex mix of those things, we have to decide what we're going to see. Dr. King confronted that in his sermon that day. And he said this. He referred back to that I Have a Dream speech that he had made that had so captured the attention of America. And he said, I must confess to you this morning that since that sweltering August afternoon in 1963, my dream has often turned into a nightmare. I've seen it shattered. I saw it shattered one night on Highway 80 in Alabama when Mrs. Viola Liuzzo was shot down. I had a nightmare and saw my dream shattered one night in Marion, Alabama when Jimmy Lee Jackson was shot down. In his sermon, he went on to name several more instances of activists, of persons who were martyred to the cause of civil rights, and how each one of those things had been a nightmare to him, and it helped shatter the dream that he had for America. His dream kept shattering. I think for a lot of us, we felt a bit of a dream shatter on January 6th. That when we saw people storming the Capitol, an all-out assault on our democratic ideals, we saw a dream shatter. We saw that dream of a nation that would be run strictly by us observing the outcome of free and fair elections shattered. But I think our dreams shatter pretty often. How many of us have had dreams shatter in our lives? How many of us have had dreams shatter at a personal level? Maybe at a relationship level? Maybe within your career? Maybe you've suffered all kinds of setbacks, all kinds of tragedies, all kinds of disillusionments that have caused the dreams that you once had to shatter. But when our dreams shatter, when we suffer that horrific experience that makes us question whether we can still believe in the thing we once believed in. Can you still believe in this nation? Can you still believe in justice? Can you still believe in equal rights? Can you still believe in fairness? Can you still believe in a person's word being their bond? Can you still believe in love? Those are all things that sometimes we believe in and have that belief tested to the point of shattering. But when our dreams shatter, when our dreams have become nightmares for a time, what do we do from there? You see, Dr. King wrote this. He said, "So yes, the dream has been shattered, and I have had my nightmarish experiences. But I tell you this morning once more that I haven't lost the faith." Will you choose your dreams? Will you hang on to your faith the way Dr. King did? That he was not going to allow those dream-shattering events to shatter his ability to continue to believe in the dream. When your dreams shatter, you can choose. Will you be shattered? Or will you continue to be a dreamer? I think it's pretty clear what Jesus is telling us to do. See, when Nathanael is talking to Jesus. He replies to Jesus and says, "Rabbi, you're the Son of God. You're the King of Israel." Because Nathanael has believed what Jesus showed him. That when Jesus greeted him and showed that he knew him and says that he saw him under the fig tree, Nathanael takes that and he understands that. And so he responds to that and says, if you did that, wow, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. And then Jesus says to him, "Do you believe because I told you that I saw you under the fig tree?" In other words, do you believe just what you saw? Do you believe only what you saw? And Jesus tells him, don't just believe only what you saw, because there's more. You will see greater things than these. What you saw isn't all there is. Your dreams are to be greater than what you've seen. Your dreams are to go further than what you've seen. What you've seen, and what you've seen means that it's possible. So now it is time to believe in more than what you saw. You see, the best experiences that we've had in life should be the floor of what we expect from the future. Because our best experiences we've had. So we know it's possible. We know it can be done. So our best experiences are the floor of what we should expect. Our best experiences of God, of what God has done for us and what God has provided to us, that should be the floor of what we should expect. What life has done for us, what life has shown to us, the best of that should be the floor of what we expect from the future. So whatever we've seen, whether it is what we've seen in our country, whatever our country has been at its best, let us expect more. Whatever we've seen from others, about others at their best, let that be the floor of what we expect from the future. And whatever we've seen from ourselves, whatever we've seen from us at our best, let that be the floor of what we expect from the future. Now, it's not easy. In fact, I got to tell you, saying these words and writing this message, I got to tell you that I need to hear this maybe more than any of you. Those of you who know me know that I can be a really tremendous cynic. I can be one who sees the worst and begins to expect that. And yet I also know that when you do that, when I do that, it takes you on a spiral down into a very dark place. When you see the worst and then you expect the worst, it just keeps feeding on itself all the way down. So I think I'm preaching this to me more than I'm preaching this to you. That the best that I've seen, the best that I've experienced, the best of everything from God, from country, from friends, from me, that needs to be the floor of what I expect from our future. I need to do what Jesus told Nathanael, to expect to see greater things than these. And I hope that you do too. I hope that you will choose to expect to see greater things than what you've seen. That the best of what you've seen is the floor of what you can expect. Amen.